This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Folklore of the Santal Parganas. Translated by Cecil Henry Bompas of the Indian Civil Service. LibriVox Volume 1. Preface. Recorded by Maria Chelano. The Santals are a Munda tribe, a branch of that aboriginal element which probably entered India from the northeast. At the present day they inhabit the eastern outskirts of the Chutia Nagpura Plateau. Originally hunters and dwellers in the jungle, they are still but indifferent agriculturists. Like the Mundas and Hos and other representatives of the race, they are jovial in character, fond of their rice beer, and ready to take a joke. Their social organization is very complete. Each village has its headman or manji, with his assistant, the paranik. The jagmani is charged with the supervision of the morals of the young men and women. The naeka is the village priest. The godet is the village constable. Over a group of villages is the Pargana, or tribal chief. The Santals are divided into exogamous septs, originally 12 in number, and their social observances are complex, e.g., while some relations treat each other with the greatest reserve, between others the utmost freedom of intercourse is allowed. Their religion is animistic. Spirits, bangas, are everywhere around them. The spirits of their ancestors, the spirit of the house, the spirit dwelling in the patch of primeval forest preserved in each village. Every hill, tree, and rock may have its spirit. These spirits are propitiated by elaborate ceremonies and sacrifices, which generally terminate in dances and the drinking of rice beer. The Santal Parganas is a district 4,800 square miles in area, lying about 150 miles north of Calcutta, and was formed into a separate administration after the Santals had risen in rebellion in 1856. The Santals at present form about 1/3 of the population. The stories and legends which are here translated have been collected by the Reverend O. Bodding, D.D., of the Scandinavian Mission to the Santals. To be perfectly sure that neither language nor ideas should in any way be influenced by contact with a European mind, he arranged for most of them to be written out in Santali, principally by a Christian convert named Sagram Murmu, at present living at Mahulpahari in the Santal Parganas. Santali is an agglutinative language with great regularity and complexity, but when the Santals come in contact with races speaking an Aryan language, it is apt to become corrupted with foreign idioms. The language in which these stories has been written is beautifully pure, and the purity of language may be accepted as an index that the ideas have not been affected, as is often the case, by contact with Europeans. My translation, though somewhat condensed, is very literal, and the stories have perhaps thereby an added interest as showing the way in which a very primitive people look at things. The Santals are great storytellers. The old folk of the village gather the young people round them in the evening and tell them stories, and the men, when watching the crops on the threshing floor, will often sit up all night telling stories. There is, however, no doubt that at the present time the knowledge of these stories tends to die out. Under the peace which British rule brings, there is more intercourse between the different communities and castes. A considerable degree of assimilation takes place, and old customs and traditions tend to be obliterated. Several collections of Indian stories have been made. E.G. Stokes Indian Fairy Tales, Freer Old Deccan Days, Day, Folk Tales of Bengal, and Knowles' Folk Tales of Kashmir. And it will be seen that all the stories in the present collection are by no means of pure Santal origin. Incidents which form part of the common stock of Indian folklore abound, and many of the stories professedly relate to characters of various Hindu castes. Others again deal with such essentially Santal beliefs as the dealings of men and Bangas. The Reverend Dr. Campbell of Gobindpura published in 1891 a collection of Santal folk tales. He gathered his materials in the district of Mangbam, and many of the stories are identical with those included in the present volume. I have added as an appendix some stories which I have collected among the Hos of Singhbum, a tribe closely related to the Santals, and which the Asiatic Society of Bengal has kindly permitted me to reprint here. My task has been merely one of translation. It is due solely to Mr. Botting's influence with and intimate knowledge of the people that the stories have been committed to writing, and I have to thank him for assistance and advice throughout my work of translation. I have roughly classified the stories. In Part 1 are stories of a general character. Part 2, stories relating to animals. In Part 3, stories which are scarcely folklore but are anecdotes relating to Santal life. In Part 4, stories relating to the dealings of Bangas and men. In Part 5 are some legends and traditions, and a few notes relating to tribal customs. Part 6 contains illustrations of the belief in witchcraft. I have had to omit a certain number of stories as unsuited for publication. C. H. Bompas. End of Preface.